Hello and welcome to Rogue Voice, conversations that inspire and connect. I'm Tiffany Cooper.
And I'm Jessica Gomez. It's been almost 3 weeks since the Alameda fire just completely destroyed a couple of our cities and ripped through parts of Medford. And I think this is right about the time where many of us are starting to, the reality of this is beginning to sink in, Tiffany.
Absolutely. You know, I spoke with my friend who lived in Talent who lost her home, and she's already saying that, you know, they're just emotionally drained, but everything is going well with the insurance process, unbelievably well. And she's looking to try to rebuild her home. You know, it's been devastating for the community. She says, you know, it's just when you drive by, it's a horror and terror and of loss. I mean, have you found the same thing as well with friends and family who?
Oh, you know, absolutely. There are just so many questions about what to do now. And you know, I have family in Talent, and so I went with my sister and we drove through that area to go and collect some of her things. And boy, it was devastating.
It is, but you know, we are very blessed and lucky to have two incredible guests joining us today to talk about next steps and how communities begin to work to pick up the pieces after a devastating event. So please let me introduce Dee Anne Everson, CEO, Executive Director of United Way of Jackson County, and Alec Lamoreaux, Operations Manager of Northwest Seasonal Workers Association. Welcome both to the show.
Thanks so very much. It's great to be here.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's you know, we're so lucky to have both of you in our community. Right after this happened, I stopped by your office, Dee Anne, and I know that you have been working around the clock, trying to kind of pull community resources together, and same thing for you, Alec. Dee Anne, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about the mission of United Way and you know, what your role is in supporting the community as they recover from Alameda?
Sure, and really thanks again, and thanks for that drop by. It was great. Because that's what people are doing right now across this whole community. They're checking in with people they care about and people that can help and people who need help. And we are a community rising already. The United Way's mission is mobilizing caring to affect change. So I hope we deliver on that promise over the next couple of years, because we're in it for the long haul. We're a 63-year-old organization that has focused on what we call the building blocks of a good life, which are education, income, health, and transportation. When COVID hit on March 13th, we got a little reoriented and began a COVID campaign, and have already expended more than $1.5 million to help individuals, families, and small businesses pay their bills during this time. That's still going on. We're still doing that. And whoever coined the word twindemic, I'm kind of mad at, as we have both the fire and COVID still. So now we have a fire fund, and I'm thrilled to share publicly for the first time, literally got this number a few minutes ago, our fund is over $1.1 million.
Wow.
I think we need 3 million to make this really happen and be strong for our community, but we're well on our way. And that is thanks to hundreds of donors and foundations and people who just call and give, because they know we're in it for the intermediate and long term. So we'll be making grant awards to individuals, families, and small businesses as they begin to rebuild and recover. We aren't an immediate disaster aid group, but we'll step in after that dries up.
Wow, that's great that you, I mean, this organization, I'm very familiar with it. I was part of it when I was in Alaska, and I mean, the work that you guys do is just, I mean, you are foundational for the community. Without what you guys do, I don't know how the community would survive. I mean, you have such a great team. Can you talk about the team that you have, the support, you know, that supports the organization?
So we're really lucky, and thanks for those comments. The United Way is different in every little community. We have a staff of 6 and 1 full-time intern doing a charitable mission for a year with our organization. And we also have 30 board members who represent all of Jackson County. We have a total of 1,500 volunteers who are willing to do everything from pick up a shovel to advocate before the legislature, or to write letters to the editor, or help make decisions about United Way's own finances. So it runs the gamut of people in our community. And because we all walk with a story, the privilege of working here is that we get to hear those stories. And our staff is amazing and incredible, and we wouldn't be who we are without every single one of them.
Absolutely. You know, Alex, I want to shift to you for a moment. You moved to the Rogue Valley in 2007 to assume the role of operations manager of Northwest Seasonal Workers Association. So could you talk a little bit about what you do and how important it is in the Rogue Valley?
Sure, and thank you for having me on Rogue Voice. Northwest Seasonal Workers Association is an all-volunteer self-help membership association of seasonal and other low-income workers uniting to end our poverty conditions. In the COVID era, you often hear the term essential workers, and you can't get more essential than the workers in the agricultural, timber, and tourism industries here in Southern Oregon. And that's the majority of our membership, over 30,000 members here in the Rogue Valley. And our members work together with volunteers from all walks of life, allies throughout the community, including United Way, Rogue Valley Micro Devices, many others, to build a benefit program that includes things like emergency food, clothing, preventive medical care, legal advice, a job board, and more. Our office is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. We've never closed in the 44 years we've been here. I have, as you mentioned, been here since 2007. So we've been through recessions, the Great Recession, pandemics, and now historic catastrophic wildfires. We've never closed, and our motto is we're here until poverty isn't. And so we've been able to count on dozens of attorneys who volunteer their time, physicians, nurses, and the business community. Since we are dependent, we don't take any government funding, so it's completely supported by folks like United Way and many others in our community.
Alec, I just love what Northwest Seasonal Workers, the message that you have and what you do in the community. You know, when we first met years ago, now one of the things that struck me that was so special about what you do is that your members are actively working for other members and actively providing services wherever they can. So it's to me, it's very much a cooperative, you know, environment where, you know, if you have something of value that someone needs and you're a member of the organization, people really do take the time to step up and provide, you know, for others, you know, even when they don't have a lot. And I know that, you know, that's even happening now in this really great time of need. You talked about, you know, one of your members had said is sending up a truck of clothing and whatnot. Would you tell us that story? Because I just think it's so powerful.
Well, I mean, one of the most powerful things, in addition to the outpouring of support from members of our association who were not directly affected by the Alameda fire, coming in, bringing food for other volunteers, bringing food for those who have been displaced, have lost their homes. So in addition to the countless collections and donations and volunteer hours, both from our members and volunteers throughout the community. I mean, we've had over 150 new volunteers in the last week and a half. And we have 10 new volunteers scheduled every day, I think up until the first week of October. We, as you mentioned, we do still have COVID, and that's a consideration. And so we've tried to limit the numbers of new volunteers and volunteers overall in at any given time. But I think one of the most powerful stories is how many of our members who lost their homes literally the very next day were at work. They were at work picking the pears. They were at work cleaning individuals' homes, cleaning hotel rooms. They were preparing meals at the restaurants, serving at restaurants, doing childcare, doing the jobs that they do day in and day out, and continue to do so. And that we can talk a little bit more, but that is part of what has made it even more difficult for folks to quickly recover from this, because they do have to continue working, because they do have families. But I can think of, we held an emergency meeting 2 days after the fire. 11 of the members who showed up for that meeting lost their homes in the fire. And each one of them, when they introduced themselves, they said who they were, how many years they've been members, in some cases over 30, that they've been affected by this, they've lost their homes, they've lost everything, but they also want to help. And that's been the attitude and the spirit of our members going back to 1976. That it's not a charity; it's solidarity.
That's really incredible. I love that spirit of resilience so much, and it's so important. Dee Anne, as this kind of as time goes by, I mean, we have almost 2,000 homes that were burned. We have a lot of people that are in need of resources. Where should people be going? What are some of the resources that people should be trying to tap into as they begin to think about sort of the longer term financial and housing assistance needs that our community will be facing?
That's a great question. It's really important that now, if you owned where you lived, that you apply for FEMA immediately. That's the most important thing we can say. You're not going to get gobs of money from them, of course. But if you owned where you live, you need to be on that list. And so for the rest of the folks who didn't own, some renters are eligible for assistance. Unfortunately, through FEMA, non-citizens are not eligible for those funds. But there are lots of other funds in our community that have been established through corporations that have foundations, through places where they may work. For example, if you have workers in the healthcare system, both of our hospital systems have foundations and have funds to help people with disaster. So it's important to check with your workplace. That also applies often in school districts, in major corporations, in financial institutions, any of those places. And some of the hotels, the larger hotels, have access to emergency funds to help employees who have been affected. And so it's really important to check in with your HR departments to see if that's a possibility, because once you loop all of these opportunities for help together, you will be able to reestablish But with just one of those pieces of help, chances are that's not a recovery fund, right? And when United Way launches our application, we'll go big all over social media and print media and television media to tell people our application is available. Because we're not an immediate aid organization, we're trying really hard to hold off on dumping that application into the market until it's time. But all of those pieces together, and the various GoFundMes and all of those other things, people need to reach out and go to organizations and ask for help, and know that all of us who have those funds, we are responsible to reach out to people in need. It's my responsibility to make sure we get the word out to everyone through Alec, through other agencies that we partner with, that our funds are available, that our applications available. We've shared our COVID applications with Northwest Seasonal Workers and have funded many of those. So the web of services in our community is real and strong and important. And it will be as we recover from this fire. It's going to take us a good 5 years. The important thing is to go slow to go fast. But we've got to get housing on the ground as soon as we can, because we don't want Alec's members to move away.
Yeah.
We don't want employees who lost everything, regardless of where they were, to move away. We want this community strong. Yeah.
And I think it will be strong. I feel like we're on the uphill of that. And thank you for all of that information for those viewers who are listening and watching. That's information that is valuable to be shared. Thank you for that. But I want to ask you, Dee Anne, can you talk a little bit about immediate issues you're hearing from the community, including things that we may not get featured in the headlines? You know, what are you hearing on the ground from the actual people?
A lot, and probably not that dissimilar from what Alec is hearing too. We have to be aggressive with insurance companies. Some are being awesome, and some have already paid out. A gentleman at a fundraiser for United Way's Fund on Sunday gave me $100, and I was very grateful, and we chatted, and he said, I wish it could be more, but I lost everything. And I was so profoundly moved by that reaction in our community. His insurance has already paid off.
Wow.
And I have heard, sadly, that people of color have struggled with their insurance companies. And so we need to advocate, all of us, everyone watching and listening, and you three, we need to push as hard as we can to make insurance companies pay up to their commitments.
Absolutely.
So that's the number one thing I'm hearing so far.
Well, Alec, is that something that I'm gonna guess your members, are also sort of struggling in sort of what is the course of action now? How do we go about contacting insurance companies, whether they're owner or renters? Is that something your organization is going to be actively working on, or is your focus in a different area?
Yeah. So I guess first of all, what we immediately established communication with several hundred membership families. Establishing lines of communication is critical. We began taking requests. What are the needs that people have? We secured storage, a storage location. Thank you for your help with that, Jessica. And a distribution center with Medford School District, we call Benefit Office. And thank you for that, Dee Anne. We obviously we do have members who had insurance. We do have members applying for FEMA. The reality for so many of those who lost their homes, particularly in Talent, Phoenix, and parts of Medford, from Talent Mobile Village to Coleman Creek Estates to Rogue Valley Mobile Village. The majority of our members did not have insurance on those mobile homes. We have heard from some of our members that lived at Medford Estates, which is kind of the creme de la creme of mobile home parks, or was rather. Manufactured homes, built more recently. The majority of folks living there that we know do have insurance and are filing claims. And I got a report today from one of our members that she was receiving 75% of the assessed value and 75% of what she lost as far as what she can expect to receive. But the majority, and I'm talking, we had 93 households of the 121 at Coleman Creek Estates, which was 135 North Phoenix Road. None of the folks we've been able to contact have insurance.
Wow.
It's not necessarily the case that they couldn't have purchased insurance, but most people don't have insurance. So that's been our biggest concern, the people who are uninsured, the people who, for whatever reason, are not eligible for assistance through FEMA. And we're talking thousands. We have over 30,000 members. We estimate that approximately 10% of our membership is now homeless. Just to give you a sense of the loss when you deal with.
Do you have any sense of like what the strategy might be when it comes to housing right now? Because I don't know. It's so new. I think it takes a bit to get people into temporary housing. But do you know if there's a plan yet for what to do in the next couple of months?
Well, I know that Representative Marsh is working really hard with rapid rehousing and to form partnerships that are public and private to get things moving forward. Rogue Action Center is establishing a number of temporary shelters, which are places people can live for a period of time. And of course, FEMA shelters, which not that many people will get those FEMA trailers. I think we'll only get around 1,000 of them. People can live in those for up to a year and a half.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and if you look at housing and the need for affordable housing, prior to this, we had 1.5% vacancy rate. The problems of housing in our community have been here for years and years. Housing Authority has had a 6-year waiting list. Access is not far from that, from conversations I've had with representatives from those agencies. If you look at the question of housing in relation to this disaster, you're looking at immediate or emergency housing, intermediate housing, like what Dee Anne's talking about with the FEMA trailers, and permanent housing, right? And so what we've done as far as immediate housing, thanks to People's Bank, and they've issued press releases on this as far as their commitment to the community and to be through each phase through these processes of recovery, of both relief and recovery. We've been able to place 70 households in hotels.
I was going to ask.
But People's Bank has been paying for those rooms, and they will continue to do so until individuals, families can work out other arrangements, or until our local city, county, state, and federal government agencies can provide housing. So we've been able to count on the support of People's Bank for this process. But a lot of people are scattered around the county. Some left the state. To speak to Dee Anne's point of the seasonal workforce, if people are unable to find safe, local, affordable housing, they'll be forced to move elsewhere.
Yes.
And that creates economic problems for our community, for our tax base, for our schools, for our property taxes, et cetera. And so, so I know that a lot of folks are working very hard on the question of housing access and housing authority, and People's Bank's been working with those agencies, assisting housing authority in placing families well in hotels. But there's the immediate need, there's the intermediate need, and then there's the permanent. And I guess our main concern and contribution to those discussions taking place is those who have been most affected by this disaster have to be part of the decision-making process, to both in terms of the relief aspect and the recovery aspect. The families that lost their homes, that have spent decades harvesting the pears, cleaning the hotel rooms, caring for the sick and the elderly and children, have to be a part of that decision-making process of permanent solutions to the housing problem.
Yes, and I'm sure it's not going to be an overnight decision. You know, my fear would be that people would, I don't know what the percentage would be, if it's not, if they can't find immediate help and housing, that they will leave and then come back when things settle down. But that's not the ultimate solution. You don't want people relocating, as you said before. Do you fear that? Do you know what the percentage is that you've heard people actually having? Is it a large percentage of people leaving the state?
Very, very few. Most are living with friends or family. We've got a lot of people in White City, 2 to 3 or more families in one home, which of course, with COVID, that presents a whole other problem as far as the potential for outbreaks. We have flu season heading our way. The colder months. Most people, the thing is, their kids go to school here, their jobs are here, their roots are here. You're talking about an estimated 80% of the Phoenix Elementary School student body, their families are homeless. 50% of Talent Elementary School. And so everyone that I've talked to, everyone that our advocates have talked to, are committed to rebuild. Their kids have their friendships here, their teachers, their whole lives are here. So people really don't want to leave and want to stay here, but it is critical that people have a place to live, and that's something that's going to take the whole community working together to get those resources and find permanent solutions to both housing shortage, housing crisis, but most importantly, poverty, that is the main obstacle to people affording housing. If you have an income, a living wage job to afford $1,500 or $2,000 or more in rent each month, then it doesn't become as much of an issue. When most of the people living in the mobile home parks were living there because you're looking at $500 or lower of space rent. And so, so you're talking about removing estimates that Representative Marsh has made, 1,500 mobile home parks, 2 whole subdivisions in Talent, 600 homes in Phoenix. Now we'll see the official numbers from FEMA and other agencies, right? Because we don't really know how many structures, how many homes were lost, but a significant portion of Talent and Phoenix housing is now gone completely. And so, and there's, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's there's no guarantee, frankly, that that anytime soon, at least, we'll be able to rebuild in those locations based on the harmful chemicals and the length of time it'll take for cleanup.
So,
And then, yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
go ahead. Before we, we could talk for hours about that, but before we wrap things up, there are a lot of people who really want to help. Dee Anne, what are some things that our community can do to help, those people who are sort of minimally impacted? How can we best help?
There's a role for every single one of us in helping our community. Someone texted me today and said, I have this car and it just sits in my garage and it's an extra car. And I think, well, that's awesome. You have an extra car, and they're giving it away.
Wow.
And there's no strings. They're just giving away a car. I've seen people offer up different things like that, little RVs that they're not really using all the time. Bicycles, a huge deal. We didn't talk about transportation, but more than 1,600 cars were destroyed in the fire. 1,628 is the latest count. And transportation is already hard here. So I think the grace in COVID, and if we didn't understand it, was the hard reset, where we all got to stop for a minute and do something better, maybe. And for those of us who didn't understand, the fire has really driven it home twice. And so we don't want more donations, unless, if you're Alec, you want new underwear and new socks and something else. Excuse me. Because we've done what every community does that has a disaster, and we've gotten too many donations and we don't have a place for them. And that becomes the next disaster. But people can donate money, they can donate time, they can donate advocacy, they can show up for their neighbors, their friends, and the rest of the community that they maybe should know.
Mm-hmm. Well, this I feel like we could go on and on and on. There are even questions I didn't get to ask about, what about tiny homes being accepted? A lot of things, but we're out of time. And, I wish we could have a part 2 of this, but I want to thank you, Dee Anne and Alec, for taking the time to talk to us during a difficult time. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot, just as much as Jessica and I. So remember to tune in to Rogue Voice online every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and connect with us on our YouTube channel and Facebook, where you can send us a message or leave a comment. We want to hear from you. So tune in, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, and we need more volunteers.
Thank you.